This is a celebration of the life of Rolph Olmsted in an area that he loved very much.
We're going to head up to the cottage and open up the cottage. See what luck we have on that.
I love the name.
We have to be back tomorrow night.
I was wondering who's got a series of I didn't even know his surname. Very little about him other than challenge. Challenges, right?
Hello. What a nice idea.
I think it's better people to explore on their own, but I'm going to also suggest people come back and experience up there or something. This is great.
But the second half, the 30 minutes, they'll be in the garden. That's the garden. Obviously, you have to go down to the event center, and that's how you're going to make it high.
So you're doing the climate?
Anyway, we stayed in the building.
Although you do
No, don't jump in. No.
This is where Rolph used to spend time in the garden.
They're going to get things underway. Okay. I just wanted also to make sure everyone had a copy of this. It's sort of this synopsis of Rolph's life in a way, and I think that's the purpose today, is to get who was this guy, Rolph, and you can see that he did have a brother. People say you look an awful lot like him, so I suppose that's true. Yes, you can hardly hear me. So if I talk like this instead of like that, it works a lot better. Thanks, Catherine. Okay, so the scheme, the purpose of today then is for everyone to learn a little bit more about Rolph and how did he come to be what he turned out to be, and also the key part here is also who are all the friends and acquaintances of Rolph, and that's you. And so I'm hoping that everyone sort of who has something to say in terms of who Rolph was, and it's interesting, you know, whether you work at Bridgehead or you're down at Loblaws at the cooking school, as Rolph referred to it as, or whether you're connected with a garden that he helped maintain, maybe shelter your snow or something like that. You all know him, but you don't know one another. And I think collectively, if we sort of talk a little bit about our connection with Rolph, we get a feeling for who this guy really was. And so that's one of the purposes of our gathering today. So hopefully we can be fairly sharp with that, and maybe that'll be 30 or so minutes, because there aren't any chairs around, so it's not going to perhaps that comfortable. But the last part, we will examine the garden a little bit more, because it meant so much to Rolph. So that's the general program, and John Schroff, who is very been connected with the garden for as long as Rolph, and there's a bench down in the corner there with John's name on it and Rolph's name on it. So who better to sort of give a short explanation on why we're here today, why the garden. So John?
Thank you, John. It's an honor to be asked to come and speak on behalf of the Friends of Maple Lawn Garden. Now, can you all hear back there? Why don't people come in a little closer, because I'm not going to be the only one that's speaking. So if you want to come in around, there's lots of space up in front. This gives me the opportunity to talk about the Maple Lawn Church. Years ago, I kept talking about this place as Maple Lawn Church. It was a place where people came on Sunday mornings, and it had a community associated with it and a spiritual aspect to it as well. And as with any church, it's always the front rows or front pews that are empty, so come in if you can. Anyways.
Excuse me, hold the mic closer, please.
Hold the mic. Oh, does that work?
That's what.
I would rather just shout. Anyway, again, on behalf of the Friends of Maple Lawn Garden, I've been asked to give you a brief synopsis of why we are actually in this place. There were three families who were responsible for, the property since the 1830s. So we're talking almost a 200-year history here in this place. We're talking about a 1-acre walled garden that dates from the 1830s, when the front end of the house was finished by John Thompson, a Scottish immigrant. Eventually, and he was connected. The house was actually, it's interesting. I talk about, well, two things. A number of years ago, the CBC came to interview me on behalf of the Friends about why this place was important, and I said it's important because it's still here, and you can tell the whole history of Bytown and ultimately Ottawa and the nation's capital right in this 1-acre garden. So the first family that were responsible for it, the Rochesters, had hired masons who were connected to the building of the Rideau Canal. They ultimately sold the property in the 1870s to the Cole family, And for anyone who knows their Quebec history, they had a very strong, Thomas Cole had a strong connection with Louis-Joseph Papineau, the great Quebecois patriot and nationalist. And then ultimately in the 1930s, the house was sold to the Rochester family. And it's because of their bequest to the federal government that we still have the property under the responsibility of the National Capital Commission today. Bringing it full circle, it was interesting to read the biography of Rolph because he actually knew Mrs. Rochester, who lived in the house until the late 1980s. And so that brings it to the Friends of Maple Lawn Garden history. The Friends group was established in 1993. It was the result of a conspiracy between Anne Faulkner and Nancy Smith, who knew each other from the Billings Estate Museum, and they brought people together. And last year we celebrated our 25th anniversary as a Friends group. And as John has already mentioned, Rolph was one of the charter members. And last August, in this garden, the NCC celebrated that 25-year anniversary, and particularly the 8 people who were still here from that original Friends group by bringing in benches and putting on plaques to the names of those 8 remaining individuals. And as I also mentioned to John, and he's already mentioned it to you, in the back far corner where those 2 women are is a bench that I share the name of Rolph Halmstead with, and it was quite an honor and a privilege because it's my absolute favorite part of the garden, because when you sit in that bench and look back this way, you get a very clear sense of what this garden was intended to be and what it's all about. So a very high degree of integrity. I don't know that there's anything more at this point. All I will say is that the community of gardeners here, though, has long been established, and it's a wonderful group to be part of if anyone's interested in joining in. And I'll just say, because we've had a coolish spring, the first weekend of June, first Sunday of June, we celebrate doors open here, and the garden should be a little further along, so you might want to come back and take a look at it at that point. But the fact of the matter that the garden is still here, and that the Friends group is just the latest in a continuum of stewards looking after it, I think speaks volumes to the people of that community, and specifically, and the reason why we're here today, Rolph's involvement and contribution over 26 years. So I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks very much, John. So picking up on that vein of the garden and stuff, that's very much Rolph and my background. My father and my mother were both immigrants to Canada from Scandinavia in the 1920s, and really one of my dad's first jobs was working to build a botanical garden in Hamilton, in an old gravel pit that they fixed up to, one of the great gardens in the country today. And so from there, he was able to start his own landscape business and masonry business, and stone walls was one of his enjoyment. So it seemed very appropriate to we're standing here amongst these fine stone walls. And so at one point we had a little nursery. This is all just the North York part of Toronto, with Willowdale, which was really a rural area at that time. And so we had a bit of a garden and nursery, and that was the place for Rolph and I to learn plants. They'd be coming in every spring, and so we had an acre of land, and it was always to look after it and grow things, and so that's very much part of Rolph and my background, and so, but life was more than that for Rolph. He was, I think, brought up in a rather ordinary situation. My father loved the outdoors, and he particularly fishing. He loved fishing, so he had friends up by the edge of Algonquin Park, Sand Lake, around Kearney, north of Huntsville. We were always there, it seemed, and so that's Rolph and fishing. I was cool on fishing. I thought it was sort of being mean to the fish, but anyway, Rolph and my dad, and so that was very important for Rolph to get out, but we never quite figured out how come Rolph wasn't going to school. He couldn't do well in school. We thought maybe for a while he had problems with his eyes and he got glasses, and no, that wasn't it. So he was essentially homeschooled. My mother had had a horticultural background from Norway, and that was very much part of the family. So she had all kinds of skills and interests in horticultural things and gardening and so forth. So anyway, that homeschooled. So what's that all about? It's a bit cooler today, but back then my mother was always concerned. Oh, Rolph isn't in school, and what a shame this is going to be, and how will he ever get enjoyment of life? But then they thought that she had TB, and it was a scar, I guess, from earlier years. But she had to go to the sanatorium in Toronto for 2 years. So what to do with Rolph? And I was about 16, and he's about 12 or so. And so anyway, somebody got the bright idea. Well, send him to Smiths Falls to the hospital there. And he's had to spend 2 years there until they decided my mother did not have TB and that he could come back home. But that was a very sad time because Rolph, they used him as really maintenance person at the hospital, and he was indoors most of the time, and so when he came back home, by then the family had moved to Stouffville, and it was a rural area, and we said, what can we do? And now it became at that time farms for handicapped people and giving them some skills, and we thought that was a great direction to go. So we built a big shed and said, okay, now we'll start raising rabbits. And so these were New Zealand whites, beautiful thing, and when you ate them, you wouldn't know the difference between a chicken and a rabbit, quite frankly. But it was a great experience for Rolph because eventually he got 100 of these rabbits, and so he had to keep records, so that helped him learn how to print and write. He had to keep track of the sales and stuff, and so there was numbers. He had to have responsibility, to feed them and everything, so he developed that. He had to meet the people who wanted to buy the rabbits, so that gave him another opportunity to engage with both. So this went on for about 4 or 5 years, and gave him great confidence that he could do something. And the local farmers thought, well, okay, let's give Rolph a chance to help out around the farms. And so one farmer had quite a few Arabian horses, and they were sort of cantankerous things, they were touchy. And the farmer was really somewhat skeptical that Rolph might be able to handle this. But it was amazing. He went in there, no horse ever tried to kick him or anything like that. And he was able to muck out the stalls, and the animals seemed to appreciate him. And that had been the case with the rabbits. So, and we'd always had a German Shepherd when he was growing up, so he was used to the animals. So animals became a very important part for Rolph, and he somehow sensed that he and animals worked out well together. So anyway, when my father passed away, my mother and I, Rolph came to Ottawa and moved to Plaza Towers. And one of the first things they did was, of course, get out and let's see what's going on in the neighborhood. And one day they walked by on the sidewalk there, and they looked in and saw Mrs. Rochester doing something, and they said, well, there's an older lady doing, and my mother, of course, is curious about the garden, and Rolph soon became sort of regular to help out in any job that this older lady wouldn't be able to handle. And so that went on for a couple of years at least. I'm not too sure the time span, but Rolph and my mother became very much part of this garden at that time. And then, of course, it went into dormancy and eventually resurfaced, as John has explained. So that's sort of Rolph's background and his connection with animals. And surprising, he's not that well coordinated, but he learned how to ride a bike, and coming to Ottawa was a great thing because in Stouffville, driving the back roads, and he broke his arm, and it was a concern. So coming here, this was an emancipation for him to be able to go out and on his own terms, rather than saying, okay, it looks safe now, you can go. Here he could pick a little bit of independence and go for a bike ride, and soon Dow's Lake and the canal and the flowers, those were his favorite places to visit. And so that gave it a sense of independence. He loved the canal. Believe it or not, Rolph was a pretty good skater, and so he could do these things, and he wanted to do. And I guess I've always got to admit, you can't forget sports. Hockey, especially, was very important for Rolph. That was his passion that he watched and participated in for years. And also cribbage. That was something. We always had a game of cribbage before he went to bed. And people are surprised. Rolph was cribbage. Oh yeah, he was quiet, but he didn't forget too much. And I think Eileen's expressed it well. Rolph, he heard everything, said nothing, and smiled. And that way you never got in trouble with anyone. So anyway, that's so Rolph has a very, I think, average, normal background of doing different things. And so then here, he came here and I was able to use these skills. And it was not tricky. The Lachlan, Mr. and Mrs. Lachlan lived up in Byron and by McKellar Park. And he just simply walked by one day, soon after arriving here, and saw Mrs. Lachlan carrying some leaves out for garbage. He asked whether he could help. And yes, and then it was, maybe, it was an opportunity to cut the grass, an opportunity to shovel the snow. Mrs. Lachlan passed, and poor Carl was in the house, and he had limitations in his ability to move, and it needed a lot of support. And he and Rolph were buddies for at least 20 years until he passed. But Rolph learned a lot, how to go to the bank and get money, how to go shopping and get things. And so Carl meant a lot to him. And Ruth, over in Roosevelt, he stayed with her until the very end, and when she passed. And then Mrs. Badham and her daughter is here today, Daphne. It was key for Mrs. Badham to stay in her house until the very end. So he did these things, and then eventually he met Mo Atella, and Mo was terrific in introducing him to the skills of the street. And he found he got involved with the Christmas party that Mo always had for people at Newport, and so he was part of that. And then he ran errands for Mo to go to the bank to get change and a variety. And he could see how Mo seemed to be able to connect with everyone. And he's, as Eileen said, he was forever listening and looking. And in the way the store is here, you get pictures of him. He's at the back of the store, but listening and learning. And so anyway, when he moved then to it became almost the face of Richmond Road. And it was sort of embarrassing to the family, saying that they're going to think he's on his own. Who is this guy? And the bank manager would do little things. Everybody took on a personal touch, say, Rolph, you got to clean that jacket, and people treated him almost like a son, so it was amazing. So that's why I think it's so important that we got together here this afternoon and talk a little bit, who was Rolph? And you people know him very well, and I think it's a testimony to our humanity as human beings, that a very simple person, and a humble person who just did it because he wanted to help people. And it was for no altruistic reason they expected anything back. And people, and the fact that all of you seem to somehow pick that up and see that here's a very ordinary chap trying to be helpful and pleasant to the community. And it really is touching for our family to sort of get that feeling. So I say, we're going to have a memory of Rolph, and hopefully all his friends and acquaintances do come, and hopefully we can begin to hear some of these unique things that Rolph did to contact them. One little story that is one of the stories for me is that when he first came in here, and in way the community where we lived down in Kirchhofer, been there for 53 years, and there was a lady, a retired nurse who lived, I think, on Roosevelt, and she was very independent. She was in her 90s, and the community wanted to help her. Oh, no, I'm okay. But she would let Rolph help her. And so he did little things for her. He was the only one who could really deal with her at a personal level. And one of the great mysteries is that, what do you do, Rolph? Well, we talk, we play Scrabble. Scrabble? We never figured that out. How could that be Scrabble with a person who was not very good at spelling, but somehow he connected with this lady. And so that's almost a microcosm of who is this guy walking up and down Richmond Road delivering flyers and cooking menus and all this other stuff. So anyway, that's a little bit of background of Rolph, and now it would be great if somebody would be dare enough to come forth here, and I will bring the mic over so we can hear the story. And so, who would like to say something about their connection with Rolph? Okay, here comes that lady who so neatly summed things up. He listens. This is Eileen. Eileen Hunt.
I'm not sure about this either. I'm just happy that I knew Rolph for 12 years the way I knew Rolph. Now I know everything that Rolph had done in his past life. I'm awestruck. But that happens at so many events. But to me, Rolph was a Tuesday man, a Sunday morning man, and any time the wind blew in between man. Rolph was the weather forecaster. Anytime the wind blew, his first trip would be down here, and then I'd get the phone call. There's a big branch off. Okay, Rolph, I will advise the NCC. And 3 times a week, Rolph always found something to phone about. We'd always just say, well, Rolph, what's new today? Sometimes he'd say, nothing. So then we'd talk about the weather. But last year had to be one of the best years of Rolph's life. And from the moment we mentioned anniversary, Rolph loved an occasion. Rolph loved food. He just loved one event leading to another event, and I understand one of his regrets was he couldn't put off his surgery, so he missed his last cooking show meal, and he missed the NCC's lunch at the keg. But anyway, Rolph just knew everything that was going on in this garden, and at the end he had every leaf, every twig, everything that needed cutting down put to bed, and with that I think he bade farewell to the garden. Sat on his bench, we came down, we saw the trees, the NCC, and dug up. He was a happy man. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Anybody else?
Helen.
Here comes another person, Eileen and Helen. Helen Brown. Tremendous help. So, Helen.
Thank you. This is a wonderful, wonderful day and a wonderful way to remember our friend. All the telephone calls and all the apples that he picked up and even leaves. It was just fabulous to see him, and he so much enjoyed it. And on behalf of the Friends of Maple Lawn, we're going to present the Humane Society with a donation in his memory. So.
Anybody with those dogs? We got to talk more about dogs. Sarah, you got a comment?
Hi, my name is Kevin Dooley, and I moved here from Irish immigrants. You probably get it from the accent, but I moved here in 2000. I came with my family, and it was one of those relocations for jobs where you don't have any choice but to come from Vancouver to Ottawa. So I'm in, and it was in October, and I'm in a bit of a, I'm talking about relocations, and this was a severe one for me. So I came here, and then Bridgehead Coffee House had opened up here on Richmond Road, the first one, the one I'm talking about here, beside Mountain Co-op. And my life had taken a few turns, and I'm a writer, researcher, kind of stuff. So I needed to work in coffee shops, and I started working there, and I've been doing it ever since. And guess who was coming in the door? Not long after I got there was Rolph. And I just saw the man come in, I noticed him, and it was crowded one time. And I saw him go up to the place. There was a busy spot. And I just said to Rolph, it's just the way I am. I just said to Rolph, you can share my table with me here. And started a wonderful coffee shop friendship that went through there. I met him in different coffee shops along the drive. And I never knew much about him, but I knew his challenge. I could see this. I have a brother who's brain damaged at birth, so I could understand it. And I never knew until the day the full dynamics of this man. I'm just totally touched. I'm totally blown away. There's a book in this man. There's a book in this whole story. Now, what I knew about Rolph was wonderful because I shared, again, I wasn't the only one doing it. We are his coffee shop friends. And the reason I'm here today is that I saw the picture up on Bridgehead in Whisper here. I didn't know Rolph had passed. I hadn't seen him. I just didn't know. And I also saw the picture up at the Legion in Westboro. And we know we've Legion members here too, because he loved the bingo. Now Rolph shared stuff. I'm hearing this. He shared stuff with me because we would talk. And what I used to love doing, when he'd come in and he'd lay out on the top of the Westboro here. It was a favourite spot of his almost every day, and he'd lay out across in the top. You remember all the scratchies? Buy the scratchies. He'd buy a bunch of scratchies and he'd lay them out across the top. And he scratched them all up in a big lay, and he lay out his lottery tickets. And he had his system going. He had a page. So when I hear about all these math skills and all these other skills, I saw another skill going on. Him playing the lotto at scratchies, up and down, and winning, and going across the road and catching his winnings. The people in Shoppers Drug Mart knew him, and the people next door in the Farmers Haven knew him. So I kind of just thought I'd share that with you folks, because I'm totally touched by the big picture here. And the big picture is we're all here, and I'm just part of that small contribution. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. The tickets, the lottery, that was always something, Rolph, because I kept an eye on the bank book, and there's always this question of where he was spending his money. But anyways, that got to something else. One of the things he did for 25 consecutive years was the Terry Fox run. And people would remind, Rolph, you're in it again this year, tell me when it's time to give you the money. And we figured that over 25 years, he raised over $5,000 for the Terry Fox Foundation. And another thing is the dogs. And when the dog shop opened here, that was his love place. That was the place where he liked to go, and he walked the dogs. And then there were causes there to fundraise for the Humane Society, and I think it was another dog. So there was over $2,000 he raised for the dogs, and he was sort of the dog ambassador, I guess they call him. And the mention of Bridgehead is that was a very touching thing too, because at the end, the last day that he was able to move before he had to be rushed to the hospital, he said, I gotta go to Bridgehead. And he went to Bridgehead to show him the dog of the day. I said, why did you do that? You know your health. Well, the milkman always smiled when he saw the dog of the day picture. And talking to the manager of Bridgehead now, he says, oh, he came over to thank me that day in case he didn't make it through the operation. He wanted to thank me for all the things that they had done to help him. And my goodness, because this operation was supposed to be a success. And it was really for the first few days, but then water started to accumulate on the lungs, and then everything started going. So in the end, it just wasn't going to work. But I thought, that's amazing. He went over there, dragged himself across the Richmond Road to thank management for all the kind things he had done. And so I think that's Rolph, I guess, his sense of duty, his sense of community. Is there another recollection of Rolph?
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me all right? My name is Siobhan. I garden at Golden Manors in the northeast corner. And Rolph would come along from Plaza Towers around to Dominion, and he said just special so he could see my garden. And he watched me from the first day I put that spade in the ground, several years till I had a beautiful perennial garden. And he was the most wonderful, kind-hearted soul I've ever known. Do you know he would come by with bags of doggy do? No dog in sight, but he would have collect the doggy do, and pass it over the fence to me, and I'd take it to the dumpster. And then he would come with beer cans and Coke cans and pass them to me, and I would take them to the recycle bin. I'm going to miss him so much. He was my special garden friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Rick, and I'm sort of a neighbor. I'm a neighbor of John's and Diane. And Bonnie and I, my wife, have known John for many, many, many years. We've probably met him on the street on Richmond Road over 100 times in the last few years. And I don't know if anybody from Bridgehead is actually here today, but I'm a patron of Bridgehead as well, especially when it was beside Mech. And Rolph was a daily patron there. And he would come in and he would have flyers from PharmaSave, or he would have the dog of the day he'd want to show us, and he would come over and say hi. But what I really noticed was how the staff treated him. When he came in, all of a sudden, from behind the counter, up it came this lovely blue Bridgehead cup, got filled with coffee. Rolph would walk over to the counter. They would hand Rolph his coffee, no money, exchanged hands. So I thought that was a wonderful gesture by Bridgehead. And I think Rolph was very deserving of that for all of the great things he has done for our community. And just as an individual, his personality just shone. Every time you saw him on the street, there was a smile and a greeting. Most of the time I saw him on the street, he was walking dogs, and which was his pleasure. I mean, that was one of the things he just loved to do. And I'm really going to miss him. I already do miss him because there's a big empty spot up there on Richmond Road. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick.
Hello, my name is Paul. You've heard so often about Ralph's love of food. And my wife, Mary Ellen, were a long time Tuesday noon hour cooking class with Rolph. I think the first time we saw Rolph 6-7 years ago, we walked in, there's this gentleman sitting there, and there was always at the beginning a cloister of us elderly retired people who could get away at noon hour to take a cooking class, and there's this man with a t-shirt with a dog in the back, and I was curious to know of him. And Mary Ellen took a shining to him, as a lot of people tend to with Rolph, and he just had this wonderful way of loving food. But what I'd like to add to what this gentleman just said, the staff at the cooking school just loved him, and he was treated with such kindness, but with not sympathy, but rather tried very earnestly to share with him knowledge of skills of cooking. And Rolph lapped it up. He just loved both the attention that was conferred on him, but also just being able to, he would ask my wife, what did they say? What was it? You never knew what he was going, I never knew everything we found out today about him, his life. When we read the obituary, and I said to Mary Ellen, did you know this about Rolph? Did you? And he was just our friend every Tuesday for many years. And hearing what we're hearing today about what he has meant to the people here and how he touched people, he certainly touched us. And I know the coordinator who was most recently there just loved him and dearly has missed him because he just brought, when he walked in that room, he just brought a light to everyone who was there. And that's our recollection of Rolph.
Well expressed. Thank you very much. Okay, there's someone who's raring to get to the bit, and that's Rolph's grandniece and nephew, and Polly. Come on, Polly. Yeah.
You want to say something?
What's that? Oh, Maya wants to say something too, and Polly. Okay.
Okay.
Surprise.
Well, Rolph would help take care of our mom's dog, and sometimes he would even bring some recipes to us. So.
And while you're here, Polly, what about your brother? Is he around? And because I think you're going to sing and play a special tribute to Rolph. Okay, and is Maya going to help out too? Okay, Maya's impromptu going to connect. So, Toby, where are you?
He's coming.
Oh, he's coming. One day. Yeah. Oh, here he comes. Okay. Okay, so these are Rolph's grandniece and nephew, and Maya is Polly's cousin. Yeah. Okay. Guys, it's yours. Put the mic back here where it's supposed to be. Like this. Okay. You can stand back here. Stand back here. There, that's good. You don't need to put this.
No one can do it just like you. Something magic in the way you move. You're original, you know it's true. Don't let anybody take your tune. You ain't got a single thing to prove. You're original, you know it's true. Just be you. You're one of a kind, the kind of once in a lifetime, not just another face in the crowd. You light up the room with the light that's inside you. Don't be afraid to let it out. So hold your head up, don't let anybody get you down. No one can do it just like you. Something magic in the way you move. You're original, you know it's true. Don't let anybody anybody take your tune. You ain't got a single thing to prove. You're original, so just be you. Just be you, you. Just be you, you. Just be you. You're one of a kind, the kind of once in a lifetime, not just another face in the crowd. No one can do it just like you. Something magic in the way you move. You're original, you know it's true. Don't let anybody take your tune. You ain't got a single thing to prove. You're original, so just be you. Just be you, you. Just be you, you. Just be you.
I think Finn's going to play a tune. Where's Finn? Finn? Where are you, Finn?
Finn.
There he is.
I'm Jen. So Rolph was our uncle, and Diane had asked me to share something that was written in the article in the Mississippi Times that really spoke to the essence of Rolph. It was written by Tara Tosh, and it was, some people make you feel more grounded when you talk to them, more aware of what it means to live in the moment. They remind you of what's important. Westboro resident Rolph Olmsted was one of those people. He had an incredible ability to connect with people, and the Olmsted family is quite small, and it is absolutely incredible to see the amount of people here today. So I want to thank you for coming. The song that Finn's going to play is a tribute. It's a song called Ashokan. I'm probably saying this wrong. People that are Scottish can correct me after. Ashokan Farewell. The song's written by Jay Ungar, and the tune, he was quoted, the composer of the tune, as saying it was his way of his attempt at getting back to a feeling of connectedness. And Rolph had this unbelievable ability to connect with others, connect with people, connect with his community, connect with animals. So I don't know if you're ready now.
Thanks very much, Finn. Finish this off, this first part. Remember the second part, a tour of the actual garden, and find out some of the unique features of what a heritage garden is all about. But thought we would end with a rendition of Amazing Grace, and that will be sung by everyone. I'm not sure whether the lyrics have been handed out. Oh, they're coming. Okay, fair enough. I'll just say that it's sort of interesting. The family will lead off, but one member of the extended family is Mary Edemansky. And Mary Edemansky is sort of a historical figure in the Ottawa Valley, because back in the day when she was about the age of her grandchildren, Polly and Toby, she sang with Mac Beattie and his Melodiers, and so she's the last living member of that group that prevailed, I think, over five decades in the Ottawa Valley, and big especially up the valley. So Mary has been involved years teaching singing and things, and those were her grandchildren, Polly and Toby, that were just singing for us. So Mary, that's you, your time.
Well, it's a thrill to be involved with something that's involving Rolph Olmsted for me, believe me. It was a pleasure to have around our kitchen table, and loved my food. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that day appear, the hour I first believed. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Amazing grace. For you, Rolph. Thanks for the help, Claire.
And thanks to everyone for coming. It's amazing the people that have showed up. Certainly a testimonial to Rolph's contribution to the community, but also a statement on the community that everyone here has taken a few minutes out of a busy weekend to come here and bless us with your presence. So thank you very much. And I guess I look at it and say, what does it represent? For me, it represents the humanity of not only Rolph, but the community of Westboro. It's really touching to think that a whole bunch of strangers get together, and Rolph brought us together. So it's tremendous. And now, I was going to say that now will we have a flyover? No.
Sounds like the snowbirds.
That would be the complete opposite to the values of the Olmsted family. Cycling and active living is an important part of our credo, and that was interesting. Anyway, so now the Friends of the Garden are identified by their green vests. Would love to have everybody join in, tour the garden and understand what it takes to maintain a heritage garden. So thank you very much for coming. It's really amazing. Thank you very much.
No, but as you come in, it's certainly brighter than outside of that building because they steal heat from the building in the spring. So they're going to promote something.
Keep some young. Always be back.
I have no idea. See you again. What do you think it is? I don't know. Pardon? Yeah, Bichon. What's yours? She's very
She's quiet right now.
wow, back to back. I kept looking. I was gonna come. How are you?
Bye.
You know Phil. Oh yeah, I've known about it for years.
This is a tribute to Rolph.
That would be a nice adorable.
One more. 1, 2, 3. How about you? Get in there and we'll take one more picture. Go in. Diane, go ahead. And
Ryan, go in there.
Go in. Where's Polly? It seems every picture I take on. Standstill for 1 second. 1, 2, 3. One more. Too fast. Oh! Whoa, are you okay? 1, 2, 3. Oh, your hand. Okay. Your hand was over here. Got it.
Well-trained gardener, right? She looked at her. Lie down. Yeah, it's because another dog started going up to her.